between chapters, and today I am reviewing the entire Sookie Stackhouse series by Charlaine Harris. That is a lot of books. Every time I mention these books in a video, I do get a few comments from people expressing interest in the books, so I thought that it would be a good idea to review the series. I just thought it would be a good idea. I don't know. I can do what I want to do. This series used to be called the Southern Vampire Mysteries. It's also sometimes referred to as the True Blood series because these are the books that TV show was based on. I first heard about these books when True Blood first started, and I read the first 7 books years and years ago, like 2009. Then 2 years ago, I read the next 3 books, and this month I finished up with the final 3 books. So these are the only books that are still really fresh on my mind, so I can't really talk about the entire series really in depth, so this isn't going to be like a discussion review. This is really going to be spoiler free, maybe reasons why you might want to check this series out, and kind of just my overall thoughts on the series. So let's talk about it. So I'm going to start off with a brief summary of the first book, kind of the setup for the series, because obviously there is a lot that happens here because there are 13 books. I don't want to give anything away, so I'm going to summarize where we begin. This series follows our main character, Sookie Stackhouse, and she is a human, but she can read the thoughts of everyone around her. She has no idea why she's telepathic. This is not a thing that happens in this reality. Their world is very much just like ours, except that vampires have recently made their presence known in the world because recently there was this breakthrough where a company was able to create synthetic blood to be used in like medical treatments for blood transfusions, and the vampires were like, you know what, now we don't have to kill people to stay alive, and maybe society won't hate us and hunt us, so we can make our presence known finally and survive on this synthetic blood. So that's where we start out, and Sookie can read minds, and one night when she's working in her bar, a vampire comes into the bar. It's the first time she or anybody in her small town has ever seen a vampire, and she realizes right away that she actually cannot hear his thoughts. So she finds herself starting to be drawn into this whole paranormal world, hanging out with vampires. And through the course of this series, we do find out that there are quite a few other types of supernatural creatures. Vampires, werewolves, there are fairies, there are demons, there are witches, there's a lot going on. And each book usually does present its own little mystery, so adult mystery, romance, supernatural, all of those genres definitely fit. This series actually largely focuses on vampire politics and even werewolf and fairy politics to some extent, all these different creatures and how they govern themselves and how they do exist separate from humans, but how they're trying to integrate into the real world in modern society. And so because of that and this focus on these separate groups, I actually think that this series would be really good for fans of the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. Particularly, I think that if you started the Mortal Instruments way back when it was first published and you've kind of grown with it and now you're ready for something a bit more adult, I think the Sookie Stackhouse books would definitely be a good choice for you because it does have that supernatural paranormal aspect to it. I would definitely recommend this series to older readers of YA or YA readers who are kind of looking to graduate from that a little bit, because our main character in this book is actually in her mid-20s, but she is still going through a lot of things that a lot of YA heroines typically experience, like new relationships and kind of what she wants to do with her life. So I do think there is a good balance for like kind of a YA audience with a little bit more of an older character with a little bit more adult themes. Now, because she is a little bit older and these technically are classified as romance, there is sex mentioned and described in the books if that's something that you're worried about. There are a couple of strong themes in this series that I really enjoyed reading about. I really value them. I thought that it did it well, and those are family and humanity. Throughout the series, Sookie is pretty constantly evaluating her family ties and kind of thinking about what it means to have her family name and to carry on her family legacy. There's a lot of, you know, family loyalty, and there's also this really big focus on what it means to be human. In this world full of vampires, werewolves, and fairies, humans definitely have their own strengths, and that is mentioned time and time again. And I really liked that in this book, that it didn't just kind of do that whole separate muggle or mundane world where humans don't really know what's going on and they can't do much of anything about it. The humans are definitely a contender in this story, and they have strengths all their own. Now, moving into kind of my impression and rating of the series, when I first started the series and had read maybe 4 or 5 of the books at that point in time, I was considering this series to be one of my all-time favorites, but I wasn't reading as large of a quantity of books as I do now. So now that I have read a lot more in the past years, I no longer consider them to be all-time favorites. Overall, I thought this series was just a little bit too long, but I was satisfied with the ending. I thought that it made sense and it wrapped up well. The only qualm I had about the ending was it seemed like some things were wrapped up very, very quickly. And it's not that they didn't make sense or that I didn't like them, but I just wasn't able to see fully the character motivations for going basically from 0 to 60 with some things. It was just like flipping a switch. It made sense, but I didn't get to see enough of that growth for me to really like be super invested in the ending. My rating for the individual books has kind of wavered between 3 and 5 stars. So I've enjoyed all of these books at least a moderate amount. So I guess that overall my rating would be right around 4 stars, maybe just a little bit under because the last half of the series I wasn't enjoying as much. I don't know what my favorite was. I'll tell you which one I didn't like. I believe that's all I have to say about this series. Overall, I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it to the people mentioned before, or anybody who watched the TV show and wants to see a little bit more detail about that world and those characters. If you've read this series, let me know that down below and tell me what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye! Oh my gosh, I'm gonna drop that.